This is what I'm calling the new nettle soup, and I'm pretty into it. I'm in the woods in a little cabin, not too far from home, but just far enough so that the sounds of the city are in the distant memory. And I'm surrounded by rivers and trees and birds, and it's all very lovely. And I managed to find a nice big patch of stinging nettle on the side of the road close to where we are. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to show you how to make nettle soup. Nettles are great. They grow all over the world and they're basically just a weed, but they are super packed with nutrition and all kinds of good stuff. And they're really plentiful, so they're a great thing to cook with. You can also dry them to make tea. First step is obviously to pick the nettles. So if you find a patch, you gotta go home, you gotta dig under your sink and find your best pair of dish gloves, and then head on back out there and glove up and pick those nettles. So I just look for like the younger ones generally that don't have full seed thingies at the top. And I look for ones that are kind of not like super overgrown and gnarly and kind of have holes in them. So just nice, fresh, young nettles. And I just pick the kind of top 2/3 of the stem. I think that that's right. And then I bring them home and then I take the leaves off the stems once I get home. Gloves on the whole time. Then once I've got all the leaves separated, I just wash the nettles really well. Once they're washed, I bring a giant pot of water to a boil and then just dump the nettle leaves in and cook them for about 60 to 90 seconds. And then I just take them out, run some cold water over them, and then they're done. Once you've squeezed all the water out, you end up with like a bag of nettles turns into like a baseball size ball of squeezed out nettles. It's just like any other greens like spinach or kale or anything like that. And actually, if you don't have nettles, you can definitely make this soup with spinach or kale or any other greens you want. But we're making nettle soup. So I've got a pot, and because I'm in a vacation rental, I have limited access to good cookware. So we're working with what we've got, including a pretty crappy knife and kind of a busted up old cutting board, but all good, all good. It's part of the charm, you know? So I'm bringing this pot up to about medium high heat. This thing heats up really fast. And I'm using butter because, you know, we're at a vacation rental. I didn't pack a bottle of olive oil. Of course, they don't have that here. So I just bought a pack of really nice grass-fed butter, and I'm using it in everything we're eating this weekend. So I'm going to put about 1.5 tablespoons in there. And as most soups always often do, I'm going to start by chucking some onions in too. So I chopped the onions and then I finely grated some ginger, and then I sliced up a couple garlic cloves as well, and I'm going to chuck all of that in at once. I also have a potato, but I'm going to save that for a minute. I'm going to do like a 4-finger pinch of salt at this point. It's probably about 1/2 teaspoon. I'm not making a huge batch. There's only 2 of us here, and we only have 1 baseball-sized ball of nettles, so, you know, can't make that much soup out of it. All right, spoon. Finding the spoon, that's the next challenge. You might already be thinking, adding ginger seems a little bit unusual. Whenever you see nettle soups being made, it's always the same kind of soup. It's like onion, garlic, potato, nettles, blend it up, eat it, which is nice. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But kind of thought it'd be fun to jazz it up a little bit and show you what else is possible with nettles in soup form. So that's what we're doing. So I'm going to sweat this stuff down for a couple of minutes. Sometimes I like to put a lid on it at this point, especially if things feel really hot, because then the steam will kind of help to soften things rather than like fry them. So I'll leave that alone for a minute. All right, Now that the onions and the ginger and the garlic have all sweated down with the salt and the butter, I'm gonna chuck in my potato, and this was just one kind of small, waxy yellow potato. It was about baseball size too, like about the same size as the nettle ball. And then I said we were going in a little different direction for this, and part of that is using these coconut aminos. So this is kind of like a soy sauce substitute, and a lot of people use coconut aminos when they can't have soy. I'm kind of new to them, to be honest. They're not that readily available where I live, but I'm really enjoying them. It kind of gives that salty kind of richness in the background, and it goes well with the other ingredients we're using in this. So a little bit of that to kind of deglaze the pot. And then I'm gonna add some boiling water. Not much, kind of just enough to cover everything, which is really like, I wanna say it's like 2 cups. So this is way too big of a pot. I'm aware that my pot size choice might be a little off. Once the potatoes are in and the water is in and the coconut aminos are in, I'm just gonna bring it back up to a boil, which happened really quickly. And then I'm gonna turn it down to medium, put the lid on, and then just cook it until the potatoes are soft. And in the meantime, I'm gonna chop up my nettles, which is a bit of a job, especially with a horrible vacation cabin knife. But you can use a blender, food processor if you have one. I just have a crappy knife, so it's gonna take a while, and I probably won't make you watch the whole process. I thought I'd bought a red Fresno chili pepper and I was gonna put that into this soup as well, but I've looked everywhere and I can't seem to find it, so maybe I didn't buy it after all. But I do want a little bit of a red little pop of color in the soup, so I'm just gonna use a tomato. I know that that's not at all the same as a chili pepper, but it's what I've got. I'm just probably gonna use half, and I'm gonna cut it pretty finely. So the flesh of the tomato turned into like a nice, actual, somewhat reasonable little dice. And then the middle, like seedy bit is basically just a pulp. Once the potatoes are tender, it's time to finish the soup off. So I've got all my nettles as finely chopped as I could possibly go. Again, a food processor would be great for this. The reason I don't want to blend the whole thing afterwards is because I kind of want a few little bits. But nettle stems do tend to be on the tough side, so there's going to be like some pretty coarse bits in here. I'm going to chuck all of that in, and I'm going to chuck in the tomatoes too. And now I can see that it's quite thick, so I'm going to add a little bit more water. Crank the heat again. The final thing for this soup is some creamy, delicious coconut milk. I'm such a big fan of coconut milk and I use it a lot, and some of you may know that already. This is just gonna add such a rich creaminess to the soup. You could add cream, you could add cashew cream, you can add whatever cream-like substance you want. I just happen to love coconut milk. I don't think I'm gonna add the whole can because it might be a bit overkill. Just gonna start with a couple of big spoons. You can tell it's good coconut milk when it is firm like this. So the ginger kind of makes sense now, right? Like ginger, coconut, those coconut aminos have that kind of soy vibe. If you had the Fresno chili pepper or any kind of chili pepper, that would be so perfect here. And I might add more coconut milk. I mean, I'm not opposed to adding the whole can, but maybe some of the water. Add as much as you want. Make it as creamy as you want, as brothy as you want. Yeah, this is nice. Ooh. Mmm. That is such a good soup. Oh, yes. So that's pretty much it. And like I said, you can use any leafy green here. This is just a soup format that works for a lot of things, but it works for nettle soup too. That's it for the new nettle soup. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a little different from last week, isn't it? We go from bacon wrapped hot dogs to stinging nettle soup. Where are we gonna go next? Thanks so much for tuning in to make nettle soup with me. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you go and make something like this because it's really, really nice, especially on a rainy day like today. And I look forward to seeing you next time.